On one of the most important days of my life, Clara deliberately broke my bracelet. My brother grabbed my arm and said, "Clara kindly wished you well. Did you deliberately break the bracelet to frame her?" My boyfriend sneered at me and raised his chin. "You choose either take off this cursed thing and continue with the marriage, or—" I tore off the veil and threw it at his face. "I choose the third path. I don't want love or family ties anymore." But later, they regretted it, desperately searching for me, wanting me to come back. The mirror in the dressing room reflects my pale face. Her fingers unconsciously stroked the jade bracelet on her wrist, the cool touch making her fingertips tremble. This was given to me by my grandmother just before she passed away. She said that jade nurtures a person and can protect me from disasters. Disaster prevention. I stared at the winding emerald patterns in the bracelet and suddenly burst into laughter. The loud crash of the door being slammed open interrupted the thoughts. Clara stumbled to the dressing table, her hair disheveled, her eyes red-rimmed, looking just like a frightened rabbit. If one overlooked the fleeting smile at the corner of her mouth. "Avril, I came to bring you a bouquet." Her voice trembled as she reached out to touch the pearl hairpin in the jewelry box. I instinctively protected the box. Over the years, how many things has she accidentally broken? Of mine. At 12, I broke the glass lamp my mother gave me. At 15, I tore up the sketch I won an award for last month. I even accidentally burned the letter Gray wrote to me. But this time she didn't touch the hairpin. She suddenly stumbled and bumped into me, her diamond bracelet snagging on my bangle. A crisp sound. The jade bracelet cracked with 3 seams, and tiny fragments splashed on the ground, scattering small glimmers of light. I stood frozen in place, my eardrums buzzing. Clara's cry pierced sharply. Why did Avril push me? I just wanted to touch the bracelet. The door to the dressing room was pushed open again. Sean's bow tie was askew, his breath heavy, and as his gaze swept over the scattered shards of jade, his pupils suddenly constricted. "Avril." He grabbed my arm. "Clara kindly wished you well. Did you deliberately break the bracelet to frame her?" I stared at the sapphire cuff links on his suit sleeve. That was the birthday gift I bought with my first month's salary. Now trembling slightly with his furious breaths. "Brother, this is Grandma's heirloom." "Then what?" He sneered. "Clara is the living person. You need to apologize to her right now." "Apologize?" Gray leaned against the door frame, interrupting him, with an unlit cigarette pinched between his fingers. He wasn't wearing a tuxedo, and on his chest was pinned a cartoon rabbit brooch that Clara had embroidered last year. "Why don't I choose for Avril?" He tilted his chin at me. "Take off this cursed thing and continue the wedding. Or, I choose the third path." I tore off the veil and threw it at Gray's face, and the bracelet also snapped with a crack, finally breaking completely. Fragments fell softly through the gaps between the fingers. I bent down to pick up a piece of broken jade. The sharp edge cut into the palm. Blood droplets seeped into the cracks of the jade bracelet, like the blood my mother coughed onto the handkerchief before she passed away. "I will tell the guests that this wedding is cancelled." Gray's laughter was like shards of glass, scraping against the eardrum. He raised his hand and stuffed the cigarette into the corner of his mouth. In the flickering light of the spark, those eyes that once picked gardenias for me were filled with mockery. If it weren't for my parents threatening me with inheritance rights, do you think I would have acted so deeply in love with you for so many years? Clara huddled behind him, sobbing, tears falling like beads, as if what had shattered was not the jade bracelet, but her spine. I clenched the broken jade in my palm. The split mouth pierced into the flesh, causing pain that jolted one awake. Just like that year when he was 14, when he climbed over the wall to skip class and took me to see an outdoor movie. As we left, under the street light, he said, Childhood betrothal is great. It saves me the trouble of proposing later. At that time, his ears were bright red. Unlike now, when even humiliating me comes with a relaxed ease. Gray, don't say any more. Clara tugged at his sleeve. The diamond bracelet on her wrist hurting my eyes. Evil just really wants to marry you. Want to get married. Gray suddenly extinguished his cigarette. His leather shoe, grinding over the shattered pieces of the jade bracelet. If she weren't the beloved daughter of the Goof family, would this wooden beauty even be worthy of entering the Lin family door? Sean suddenly moved. He loosened his tie and approached me. Are you done making a scene? Are you satisfied? Now that Clara is crying so hard, she's having an asthma attack. Go out now and tell the officiant to continue the wedding. And I'll pretend nothing happened. A very familiar tone. Last year at the Lin family's banquet, Clara spilled red wine on my dress. And he apologized to me like this. Clara didn't mean to. What did you want her to do? I turned and walked towards the banquet hall, blood dripping from my fingers onto the hem of my dress. Gray laughed behind him. To catch someone, let them go. When the noise of the guests surged towards me, like a wave, I saw the puzzled and uneasy faces of Lin's parents. The hand of the host, handing over the microphone, trembled. I licked away the taste of blood from the corner of my mouth and aimed at the dark sea of cameras below. Thank you all for coming to my annulment banquet. The sound of shattered cups and plates came from the corner, and Gray finally squeezed to the front of the stage. His collar askew, and the rabbit brooch on his chest had somehow been torn off. Avril, are you crazy? He reached out to grab the microphone, his nails digging into my arm, leaving marks. Come back with me. At worst, I'll pick you a jade bracelet. That's 10 times more expensive. I turned to the side to dodge, raising my blood-soaked left hand. Fragments of jade embedded in the flesh, like a cluster of flames that are about to extinguish, yet still flicker. Gray said, this marriage was my scheme. I smiled at the camera, catching a glimpse of the joy in Clara's eyes. Then let everyone. From now on, I have no relationship with Gray whatsoever. Gray's face turned pale. At that moment, I heard Sean's muffled grunt. He went barehanded to grasp the sharp shards of jade, blood seeping out from the cuff of his suit, leaving dark stains, just like that year when I gave him cuff links. And he laughed while ruffling my hair. Avril, I'll always have your back. The sound of camera shutters from the audience poured down like a torrential rain. I walked over to Sean, carefully gathered the broken bracelet, and wrapped it in a handkerchief, then headed towards the door. April. Gray reached out his hand to me. As Gray's hand brushed against the hem of my skirt, Clara suddenly fell softly into Sean's arms. Brother. I can't breathe. She clutched her chest, tears precisely hitting the back of Sean's hand, like the blue ink spilled on my painting years ago. Gray reached out and forcefully pulled back my arm, wrapping it around Clara's shoulder. Where's the medicine? Where did you put your asthma inhaler? I stared at the lipstick mark on the back of his suit. Collar, exactly the same as the one I had wiped off while trying on makeup. My best friend. Piper's car was blocking the hotel revolving door, honking loudly. Avril. She leaned halfway out of the car window, her emerald earrings swaying in the wind, like green shooting stars. Avril will take you to eat at 10 dessert shops. In the rear view mirror, Sean was carrying Clara horizontally as he ran toward the lounge, with Gray stumbling behind, clutching a bottle of medicine. When I had a high fever at 12, they panicked like this too. But now, they are rushing towards another carefully rehearsed fainting spell. Gray, you bastard. And your brother, did a dog chew on your eyeballs? Piper slammed the accelerator, the car's engine roaring. The scent of the air freshener, mixing with the bloody smell of my palm, creating a kind of spicy wake-up call. I rolled down the car window, letting the night wind rush into my throat. When we played hide and seek as kids, Gray took the blame for me 3 times, and Sean helped me with my summer homework. For 3 whole years. The broken bracelet and the handkerchief, like Grandma's intermittent reminders as she lay dying. Avril, you must wear the bracelet when you get married. The bracelet is inlaid with a pigeon blood ruby, which my grandmother personally brought back from a mine in Myanmar. That year, I stood on tiptoe by the workbench, watching the silver-haired old man carve intricate vine patterns on the inside of the bracelet with a chisel. Is Grandma casting a spell? It is a blessing. She dipped the vermilion to outline the ruby pedestal. On the day Avril gets married, when the moonlight shines in, it will reveal your name here. The day the bracelet was put on, Gray and Sean were fighting in the living room. 15-year-old Gray tugged at Sean's collar. You promised that I would take Avril to Disney this weekend. What right do you have to steal her away? Father held the teacup, smiling as he watched the play, while Mother hummed a song in the kitchen, frying eggs. The sound of the oil splattering filled the air with warmth. The years before Clara appeared were like a gilded cloisonné box. Even the arguments were edged with honey. It was freezing rain on the day of my grandmother's funeral. After returning home, I curled up on the sofa with the jade bracelet, saying nothing. After my father entered the room, he walked towards me, not to comfort me, but to introduce a girl in a pink, fluffy dress to me and Sean. The tips of her hair were still dusted with snow, but her eyes shone with an unsettling brightness, like a wildcat that had wandered into a porcelain shop. Clara's parents sacrificed themselves during the rescue. The father kept his hand on her trembling shoulder. From now on, this is your sister. Sean was the first to crouch down, using the handkerchief that had wiped my tears to clean her face. Don't be afraid, brother will protect you. That night, Clara accidentally stumbled into my room and knocked over Grandma's treasure chest. When a jade bracelet fell at her feet, she suddenly looked up and smiled at me. Avril, guess who will believe you this time? Gray burst in just as he saw her pressing my wrist down onto the emerald shards. The moment the blood bead emerged, Clara screamed and fell into his arms. Avril insisted I wear this. I accidentally. That winter snow was truly cold. So cold that even the light in the young man's eyes froze. Later, Clara changed her surname to Gu, under her father's arrangement. On the day she changed her surname, Clara came to knock on my door, wearing the sapphire cuff links I gave to Sean. Avril, look. Dad said, this is what befits the daughter of the Gu family. She twirled the cuff link with her fingertips. The blue light, flickering over the family photo on my bedside table, in which my father held me in a princess dress. Now the owner of that dress was pressing the frame down on the table. The last scramble occurred on the night of the winter solstice. The jade safety lock, designed by Grandma, lay in Clara's palm, and she tilted her head and smiled at me. Brother Sean said, that things worn by the dead are unlucky. Avril won't be angry, right? I reached out to snatch it, but my father grabbed my wrist. If Clara likes it, give it to her. If your grandmother were alive, she would definitely want to cherish her too. As Clara fell, Gray happened to push the door open. Avril, that's enough. He caught the sobbing Clara, who was hiccuping, with one hand, and pinned me against the display case with the other. Do you have to make such a scene every time to feel satisfied? The glass cabinet door pressed against my back, and I saw 15-year-old Gray in the frame, handing me candied chestnuts. Piper parked the car in the shade of the phoenix tree, gripping the steering wheel tightly. I'll go in with you. If that green tea acts up again, I will. Don't drag down the Tang family's business. I pressed down on the back of her hand, which was bulging with veins. Last month, Gray cut off 3 collaborations with the Tang family, simply because Piper splashed half a glass of champagne on Clara. At the party, the old house's corridor light flickered on and off, much like those days of pretending to be asleep. At 16, Clara secretly wore my dress and tore the waist. My father said, let her have it. At 18, she fraudulently claimed my design and won an award. Sean said, Clara needs recognition more. Last night, she crushed my engagement. And they said Clara has been wronged. At the entrance, I pointed to the trembling dandelion under the light. For Piper. You see, some things just scatter when the wind blows. Clara curled up on the silk sofa, painting her nails. The bright red polish, dripping onto her grandmother's favorite Sue embroidery cushion. Oh dear, why is Avril back so early? She swung her little feet, the diamond anklet entwined with the pearls she took from my jewelry box. Back then, Gray said you were like a piece of stubborn toffee. And sure enough. All right, stop bothering me. From now on, Sean and Gray are yours. I don't want those two trash anymore. I walked straight past her to the safe. The password was my grandmother's death anniversary. Clara suddenly dropped the nail polish bottle, stepping barefoot on the ground covered in scarlet. What are you pretending to be so noble for? You don't want it. Can you even afford it? They were originally my trophies. She picked up the photo frame on the coffee table. A family portrait from my 5th birthday, and my face in the picture was burned with a cigarette butt. You think Gray chose me for what reason? She laughed maniacally, her nails digging into the glass frame. Every time he holds me, he says, I cry 1,000 times more vividly than you. The moment the safe popped open, she suddenly became as quiet as a ghost. I took out the remnants of the jade bracelet and carefully placed them in the safe. The moonlight invited in from the window, casting my name on the inner walls, vine-like patterns. Clara's face suddenly twisted like a demon, revealed by a spell. She rushed over and pushed the safe down. When the safe crashed to the ground, Clara's scream was as sharp as a blade, scraping against porcelain. The old treasures I cherished poured out like an avalanche. The crystal music box Gray gave me rolled to her feet. The cherry blossom specimen from my 16th year shattered into powder. And the bracelet he spent 3 months making for me was now tangled in Clara's diamond anklet. Like a dying snake. Why did Avril push me? She curled up on the carpet, 10 centimeters away from the glass shards, crying as she looked up. I am too familiar with this expression. Last year, she used this very demeanor to lock me in the attic with Sean. For an entire night, Gray burst in and knocked over the blue and white porcelain vase in the entrance. The entwined lotus pattern that Grandma loved most had cracked into 8 petals. Amidst the chaos on the ground, he stepped on the shards and pulled my wrist. Under the crystal chandelier, I saw 2 reflections of myself in his pupils, one covered in blood on the verge of collapse, and the other gently enveloped by the moonlight of 15 years. You will never learn to be kind, will you? He slammed me against the sharp corner of the cabinet, and the moment my back hit the metal floral design, I heard the faint sound of my scapula cracking. The basketballs he blocked for me, and the vicious dogs he held back in those years, have now turned into ice picks, stabbing into my ribs. Clara sobbed. At the right moment, Gray, don't blame Avril. It was my fault for touching Grandma's bracelet. Gray, hearing this, became even angrier, his hand gripping my shoulder so tightly, it felt like it was digging into my bones. Clara puts up with everything, and you still want to nitpick over a lifeless object. I've already agreed to marry you. What more do you want? My blood flows down my calf into the high heels, sticky and warm. I fumbled to pick up a half-torn sketch. On the night of my 18th birthday, Gray held this portrait outside the studio window, fireworks exploding behind him into a sea of stars. Look, my Avril is more dazzling than the moon. Now this face is soaked in red wine stains. I crumple the paper and throw it at his chest. Greg got it wrong. It's me who won't let myself go. The crumpled paper startled the enamel box on the coffee table. causing it to roll out a string of faded paper cranes, each with Mary Avril written on its wings. Folded the night before his college entrance exam. Ray suddenly froze like a statue, his Adam's apple bobbing as he tried to say something, but was interrupted by Clara's sobs. "It hurts." She clutched her smooth new ankle and sobbed, "Gray, am I going to be lame?" Gray bent down to hold her, his movements seeming to be pressed on slow motion, the cuff of his suit brushing against my bleeding knee. "Go to the hospital yourself. The wedding will still go on as planned." The last half of the sentence felt as light, as if trying to convince oneself. Their departing figures overlap with the old times. On a stormy night at 14, Gray held me, who was suffering from acute gastritis, and rushed towards the emergency room. In the puddles, crushed under his white sneakers, he shouted louder than the thunder, "Avril, don't sleep. We promised to have 2 daughters." At that moment, his leather shoes crushed, the remnants of the crystal music box, and in the instant the gear splintered. I heard my 16-year-old self asking under the starry sky, "Will you always be biased towards me?" The boy pressed the warm milk tea against my frozen red ear tips. "If I, Gray, ever change my heart, punish me by making me unable to find an umbrella every time it thunders." Suddenly lightning flashed, and thunder rumbled outside the window, and a torrential rain poured down. I curled up on my grandmother's favorite Persian carpet, watching the blood droplets meander along the cracks of the jade, converging into my name within the entwined patterns. It turns out that Grandma's blessings have never failed. It's just that some people cannot be illuminated, even by the moonlight in their blind eyes. On the 3rd day of hospitalization, the magnolias outside had shed their blooms, and the nurse said that a Miss Clara had sent a bouquet. I stared at the printed words, "Wishing you a speedy recovery" on the card, with a cold smile. Clara was too lazy to even write it by hand. In the drawer of the bedside table lay Sean's crocodile skin wallet and Gray's platinum cuff links, both of which they had left here before. The caregiver said someone would come to pick it up this morning, so I had everything thrown into a cardboard box, and then called a local express delivery to send it back to the old house. When Piper burst in holding the immigration documents, I was video notarizing the property power of attorney. "The 2 fools from the Gu family still think you're sulking." She pulled up the chat history, and in Clara's latest social media post, Gray was peeling leeches for her, with the caption, "True siblings never need blood ties." I wrapped the jade bracelet fragments in the Sioux embroidery handkerchief. "Tomorrow morning at 9,